Hello, everybody. I hope I am audible, and welcome everybody to this session. I think the audio is working and camera. Can you make me presenter? Should be done. Kiru should be now presenter as well.
You, Christian.
So we are still a bit ahead of time, but already somebody joined. Binaki Ghosh, welcome. If you don't mind, as a fun fact, right? People usually drop in the chat from which part of this planet they are joining from. So if you don't mind, you can also share this. Of course, this is not mandatory. Just to break the ice, you know. So we have the slides up and running. Beautiful. Which part of India?
So people are slowly coming in. Maybe we wait for 2 more minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Bangalore. Great.
Bangalore. Nice.
Also from Bangalore. Very nice.
So then hi to Bangalore and welcome to this session. As Kiro said, let's give it like a minute or two more. We have, at least we can see in the portal, we have a sum total of 40 registrations, excluding Kiru and myself. So of course not everybody will join. And of course we cannot wait for very long, but we give it 1 or 2 minutes more and then we kick it off, if that is fine for everybody. So we have 2 more joining. Dimitri and Oscar, welcome everybody. And so then I think, Bad Homburg, okay. The Bad Homburg that is near Frankfurt? I guess so. Haven't heard of a second one yet. Interesting. So just around the corner.
Totally.
Okie dokie. So we are 2 minutes past 11:30. I think we kick it off. Exactly as Kiro said. If you have any questions, feel free to post it here in the chat or in direct message if you don't want to share it with the community. And then let's get going. So welcome everybody to the session, which is, let's say, a second time we are presenting this to the community. We presented it yesterday to the Trailhead community and, of course, for the first time at Dreamforce in San Francisco. We are talking about what we believe is a best practice architecture when it comes to the automation of document workflows with MuleSoft. Before actually diving into the content of today's presentation, a very short introduction of the two speakers. My name is Christian Berker. I am in the role of a senior manager at LPDG, essentially responsible for our automation engagements from a project management point of view. And I have with me my precious colleague and MuleSoft ambassador.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kirutika Nityanandan. I am in the role of a managing consultant at LPDG, and my role is to design and architect all the automation projects that we come across. Back to you, Kristen.
Yeah, so just in case we do have people in the audience who are not yet aware or familiar with a product called MuleSoft IDP, just a quick introduction what it is so that you get an idea what we're talking about. So we are dealing with today with what is called MuleSoft IDP. MuleSoft IDP stands for Intelligent Document Processing. And very fundamentally speaking, it allows us to extract data from documents. MuleSoft IDP is part of the MuleSoft automation platform, together with Anypoint, MuleSoft RPA, and MuleSoft for Flow. And together with these other tools for API integration, GUI automation, and a low-code, no-code workflow tool, the MuleSoft automation platform allows for full end-to-end business process automation. With MuleSoft IDP, we can extract data in a secure and efficient way. Secure because MuleSoft IDP, as has been said, is part of the MuleSoft platform, so we can utilize the standard MuleSoft environment. It is efficient for basically three reasons. First, we are using the model out of the box as it is pre-trained already. So it is not necessary to train the model in order to extract the data. So you can straight ahead start using it. Second, you do not need to code anything in order to extract the data, as you can prompt the documents in natural language. And third, of course, as it is part of the MuleSoft platform, you can easily integrate it into the rest of your IT landscape. So obviously speaking, the added value for companies is that they can, for all back office processes, including those that are based on document flows, can be streamlined, digitized, and automated, allowing for a scalable solution that allows also for quick processing. With MuleSoft IDP, we have an AI-based technology at hand that basically solves a very generic problem, which is the problem of transforming unstructured data, like in documents and emails, to structured data that is ready for processing. According to an IBM study, more than 3/4 of companies' data is unstructured, or you have probably already seen another, let's say, picture pointing this out, which is the typical iceberg picture, where you have the tip of the iceberg, which is the structured data part that is on top of the ocean surface, and you have the larger part, which is beneath the surface, right? In the past, so this just gives you an idea of the magnitude of this problem we are looking at, and then also, of course, the potential that lies in it if we are able to solve it, or at least to solve parts of it. In the past, we have tackled this problem by throwing an OCR technology on it, adding a little bit of intelligent flavor here and there. But usually the results were only mediocre, or if they delivered nice results, they were usually tied to substantial maintaining costs. Because if something changed in the document from a structural point of view, or there was a new document type, there were usually large adjustments necessary that needed to be done to the OCR solution. And this is sort of gone in a sense with now an AI-based technology to extract this data. So after this quick introduction, we will start looking into each component that ultimately makes up this best practice architecture. And the first step that we would be looking at is what you could call a document study. That means you need to understand the documents that you want to automate, or you could also say you need to collect data about the documents that you want to automate. For instance, about the various document types that are there and in how far they are varying between each other, right? So how does type 1 look like? How does type 2 look like? And so on and so forth. Why this is needed, this is something Kiru will talk about later on in the classification part. When we are, so this is, let's say, tackling differences between document types. Now, within each document type, of course, we usually have a lot of data sitting in a document, and then questions need to be asked like, do we need all the data from this document only because it's provided? What are the important fields that we definitely need to extract? What are fields that would be maybe nice to extract, but are not necessarily needed for further processing? And in many instances, for further processing, sometimes also data is missing in the document, so that there is, let's say, an data enrichment step necessary to make it then automatable. And finally, we also need to test drive the documents in the MuleSoft IDP vehicle in order to see how the tool performs against these documents. So in a nutshell, the first step, like with every project in the past, is some sort of, let's say, requirements engineering or discovery phase, where you look at the problem that you want to automate and you try to understand what needs to be done, as this is then also laying the foundation for further building blocks through which Kiru will now take you.
Thank you, Christian. So the next building block that we are going to be talking about is classification. Sometimes it becomes necessary that before we can actually start extracting the data out of documents, that we need to first classify the document to understand what document type that we are looking at. And we're going to see 3 use cases where the classification is a prerequisite or is a value add. The first use case is when you have mixed document types coming into a single source. Let us consider an example where we are trying to automate documents that might be ending up in an email inbox. And let's say that this email inbox can receive any type of documents like contracts, purchase orders, invoices, etc. An example could be, usually companies have this info@companyname.com, right? So where all sorts of inquiries, documents, etc. come in. And in order to first start automation, we have to decide what document what document category that we want to automate. And in order to understand this, we need the specification step. And this is also done with MuleSoft IDP, where with a natural language prompt, we would just ask IDP what is the document type that we are looking at. And IDP would answer contract, invoice, purchase order, etc. And depending on the answer, we will then route it to another configuration which contains specific prompts for that particular document type. So this becomes now a two-step process. First is a classification step to understand the document type, and then a routing step, which is then routing the document to a particular configuration which contains prompts specific for that document type. So this is one use case. The second use case would be, let's say we are looking only at automating invoices. And we know that we receive invoices from three different suppliers. And each of these suppliers create invoices in a completely different format from each other. This is also a use case where classification becomes mandatory because one generic configuration, which has generic prompts for all the document types, will not probably fetch or extract very accurate data from all of the three types. So in this case, it becomes necessary first to identify which type of invoice or purchase order that we are looking at, and then to route it to a specific configuration which contains prompts for that particular supplier invoice. And then the last and final use case is that sometimes we are looking at documents which are 40, 50 pages long, where all the information that we want is located in probably 1 or 2 pages inside the document. And giving all 40 or 50 pages to IDP will confuse probably the model because there's a lot of noise involved, and this is going to affect the accuracy of the data that is being extracted. Instead, we do a classification to identify first what are the relevant pages where our information is located inside the document. And with this information, we split only these 2 pages and send only these 2 pages to IDP. This avoids all the noise surrounding the information that we want and will also greatly increase the accuracy of the extracted information. So, with having said this, classification is not always a value add and can sometimes become a maintenance overhead. Let us now look at two use cases where classification is a big no. The first one is excessive variability. Consider this with an example. Let us consider a company which is looking to automate data extraction from rental contracts. So they want to extract the rental information, the address, the tenant address, the landlord address, the guarantee, etc. Right? And you know how rental contracts look like. Some companies have rental contracts which are 2 pages long. Sometimes companies have rental contracts which are 50 pages long. And we have no rules as to where the information that we want could be found. So in this case, it doesn't make sense to actually classify the document because there is simply too many aliens, and we cannot classify them into fixed buckets. In this case, it's more beneficial to just have one configuration with generic prompts that is extracting data from most of the document types that we might come across. And this is also where the document study that Christian talked about earlier becomes super important. That we identify first what is the maximum percentage of document type we might encounter, and then we focus on this first. And then the second use case would be, let us say that it is possible to classify the documents that we might encounter into specific buckets. And we have also tried creating specific prompts for each of the document types. But then we see that these specific prompts do not give us a significant accuracy increase when compared to a generic prompt. In this case, also, it's better to just leave out the specific prompts configuration, but just go with the generic one in order to save on the maintenance effort and also the costs involved. Because classification is also an extra step, which would also increase the IDP license cost. So these is about classification. And the next building block that we're going to be talking about is manual validation. MuleSoft IDP has a very nice feature where we can include the human in the loop to verify the extraction results. So after the model has extracted the data, if the confidence of the data extraction falls below a certain threshold, then the document gets routed to a manual validation screen where the user will get notified, and he can open a screen where he sees the document, and side by side, he also sees the data that was extracted from the document. He can verify this, correct the data if at all it was wrongly extracted, and then click on submit so that the data is then sent for further processing. So this is a really nice feature which makes sure that the data extracted is completely correct. But when we think about automating a document workflow, we have to think about, do we need manual validation in our automation? And if yes, what is the right place and what is the right time to have this? We have to think about how critical is the data trying to extract, and also at what point does the data become critical. Let us consider two use cases. The first, let us consider an example where we are trying to extract data from a document and that data is being sent to Salesforce. And after it's being sent to Salesforce, there's a human who is filling in probably the rest of the data in Salesforce that is not present in the document. If you think about this, manual validation is not really necessary in this case because after the data is sent to Salesforce, anyways, a human is going to look at it, check if everything is fine as he fills in the rest 50% of the data. So, including manual validation in this flow will only increase the overhead because they have to first check the manually validate the data once in MuleSoft and then a second time in Salesforce. So in this case, manual validation becomes very redundant. But let us consider another example where the data that we extract is sent to a destination system, which is then immediately being consumed in order to generate invoices to customers. In this case, it becomes super critical that we have 100% correct data ending up in the destination system. And here, manual validation would really make sense to ensure that we only send correct data to the destination system. So, this is a trade off that we have to think about. Validating each and every document is going to slow down the speed at which the data is ending up in the destination system. But at the same time, skipping manual validation would increase the risk that you might have erroneous data that could end up in the destination system. So, this is totally process dependent. So, these are the questions or these are the points that we have to think about before we can start automating the document workflow. Now, we talked a lot about the building blocks, right? So, the document study, classification, and manual validation. And let us say that we have thought about all of these points, we have evaluated all of these criteria, and we have decided how we are going to approach the problem. And now we are ready to start the actual automation of the document workflow. Let's see some of the points that we have to keep in mind when we actually start the automation of the document workflow with MuleSoft IDP. As Christian explained, because MuleSoft IDP is natural language prompts, like how you're chatting with ChatGPT, right? Sometimes it's very tempting for people to just try to do everything with IDP itself, as in write huge prompts, to not just extract information, but also to kind of transform data, validate data, and bring it to a format to be directly sent to the destination system, all in IDP. But this is not really the correct approach. IDP must only do the extraction of the data that we see in the document, and MuleSoft must be the place where all the transformation, validation, and enrichment is taking place. Let us see this with a quick example. Consider the prompt that you see on the screen, where we are asking IDP to extract the cost center of the cost center that is from the document. But the tricky part is that cost center is not directly present in the document. What is present in the document is the supplier name. And here we are asking IDP to extract the supplier name and depending on the supplier name to map it to a particular cost center. While this prompt might work, this is not really the correct approach to do it. A better approach would be to do it like this, to ask IDP to extract what it sees in the document, which is the supplier name. And this mapping from the supplier name to the cost center can be done in MuleSoft. So MuleSoft is the single point where you have to do the business logic, the mapping, the validation, and enrichment of the data that is extracted by IDP. And IDP is only doing the raw extraction and is also a platform for the manual validation if at all the extraction quality is not up to the standard. And with MuleSoft IDP, it is also important to think about some of the IDP specific technical terms before we start the document workflow automation. First would be, what is the approach that we are going for? We have traditional natural language processing or Einstein. So traditional language, natural language processing is just machine learning, does not involve AI, and it works really well for standard looking invoices and purchase orders. But if your document contains a lot of variants and does not look like a standard template invoice or purchase order, then Einstein works better because it has the AI component and it can handle a lot of variances. And the second one would be to choose the correct document action template. Currently, there are three document action templates in MuleSoft IDP: invoice, purchase order, and generic. Invoice and purchase order, as the name talks about, is for standard invoices and purchase orders. And it also contains some of the standard fields that you would find in all invoices and purchase orders. Like, for example, the invoice date, the invoice number, the line items, price, etc. But if your document is neither an invoice nor a purchase order, then you can go for a generic type, or you can also go for the generic type if you do not want any of the standard fields that are present in the About Who templates. Going for generic also allows you to extract everything with only prompts. And you also have another feature called as a custom schema in generic, which makes the extraction very cost effective. Because let's say if you have 100 prompts, which is extracting data from your document, in the background, if you enable custom schema, it is going to wrap all the 100 prompts into one big single prompt and send it to the AI model in the background. Right? So this would be very effective in the sense of token consumption for the AI model. And the last point is to choose the right type of prompt. In MuleSoft IDP, we have currently fields and tables. And it's very important to choose the correct type when trying to extract data. We must use fields for simple data extraction. Like, for example, where you think the response would be a simple string. Like, for example, the invoice number, where the return will be just a string which contains the invoice number. But if your prompt is going to return complex data, like, for example, addresses which contain more than one subpart, like the street, city, etc., or, for example, the purchase order line items, which also contains the purchase order, the position number, the price, the quantity, etc., which is also a complex type, then it is better to go for tables. Let us see this also with the short example. Consider this prompt where you're asking IDP to extract the billing address. And as I said earlier, billing address is a complex data type which contains multiple subparts, right? So you're here asking IDP to extract the billing address and then give it in a JSON format. If this is the prompt, then your output is going to look like this, where IDP is giving you back the correct results, yes, but you can see that the structure is not so nice. All of your data is located in the single field called value, and all of the subparts have one confidence score. Yeah? Instead, it would be better to configure this under the tables section. Let's see how. So you configure this under the tables section where you have the billing address as a root, and then you have multiple subparts, the city, state, street, and the postal code. And then this would be the result. And you can see that the output is much more cleaner, structured. And what is super important is you have a confidence score for each and every subpart as well. This is very important because it gives you more granular control when you want to route a document to manual validation depending on the confidence scores. So these are some of the things that you can keep in mind when you're starting the automation of a document workflow with MuleSoft IDP. Now, to take all or to kind of give you the key takeaways from what we have seen so far, I hand it back to Kristen.
Yes. So, after looking into each of these components and having seen what they individually contribute to the overall solution or architecture, we are now ready to put it all together into a best practice architecture for automating document workflows with MuleSoft. And in this slide, you can see, let's say, a very stylized version of this. So first of all, of course, we have a source that provides the necessary documents to MuleSoft IDP. We haven't covered this part in our today's presentation. As you can imagine, there are multiple places where the data could come from, and there are multiple ways in which you could provide those documents. But once they have reached MuleSoft IDP, the next step would be to classify the documents into various document classes, if that is a value-adding step, as has been pointed out by Kiru some slides ago. So let's say the documents have been classified. They are then routed in the next step to document-specific prompts, where the actual data extraction then takes place. And keep in mind here to really focus on the raw extraction of the data. Now, extracting the data, there are two potential outcomes. Either the configured thresholds are met or they aren't, right? If we are below the configured thresholds, then this is the place where the manual validation comes into the picture. Or if we are good with the threshold, then of course the data is directly passed on to the next step. The next step would then be to add to this still raw data some business rules, quality checks, validations, and maybe even corrections, or also what we talked about earlier, some data enrichment, right? So this is where we are adding business logic, which is, as you can see, still done within MuleSoft, but outside of MuleSoft IDP. Right? And now, after this step, we would have validated data, which is then either passed on to the destination system, or I don't know, there might be in this process some additional other steps that are following. So you just pass on the validated data to the next automation step, which more or less completes the picture here of this best practice architecture. Now, one important point is to realize that we made it all the way through our presentation so far without even mentioning the word agent once, which, if you think about it, is a bit strange after Agentforce in 2024 and the Agentic Enterprise at this year's Dreamforce. So you might think whether or not this makes sense. And yeah, you're damn right. It maybe doesn't make sense. So here we go. Here's your agent slide, right? So of course, from a architectural point of view, the next logical step would be to have this this data extracting solution not running standalone, but maybe provided as a let's say agent within your agent farm, right? Which you can then consume and use. And at this point, this is when the recently GA announced MuleSoft Agent Fabric comes into the picture, as it provides governance and orchestration to your entire agent farm, right? And allows for discovery of other agents and turn them into, let's say, an intelligent network to really then automate complex business processes. Right? So you will probably hear more about Agent Fabric very soon. But having said this, we have basically reached the end of our presentation. And we do thank you for your attention. And we will still be hanging out for a couple of more minutes for questions. And yeah, thank you very much. Have a great day and hope to see you soon. So I'm just scrolling through the chat and see if there are questions, but there's only one regarding the recording.
There's one now, Christian. So Pinaki is asking, I have a query, I have a requirement that want to filter out the documents based on self-signed signature for validation purpose, which I saw it's giving intermediate issues sometimes. It's giving false, how to improve the outcomes. Pinaki, could you give us more details on what exactly you want to extract out of the documents? Is it the signature that you want to extract, or is it something else from the self-signed document? You're trying to then extract the signature. Um, I mean, without seeing the exact prompt and everything, I cannot help much, but I would say you can try. First of all, this feature called as image recognition that is available with MuleSoft IDP with all the models. This can help. And the second thing is also to experiment with different models. We also have now Gemini that is released recently, I think from 2 or 3 weeks, which is also very, very fast on one hand and also more accurate for certain types of documents. So you could also experiment with this and see if it really improves the results or makes the results more consistent.
The only thing I think that can be said for sure is that it is, of course, much easier to solve to check whether or not a signature is present on the document. This should be doable, but to verify if, let's say, the signature belongs to the person or the signature is correct, this should be quite tough or hard to do. So if you just want to understand yes or no, there is a signature on the document, then what Kiru said could be a way. Usually a signature is expected also in a certain area of a document, right? So you could do picture search, something like this there. Does this help, Pinaki? Any other questions? We give it a couple of more seconds. If no further questions are coming in, then we would just thank you again, everybody, and would close the call. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, then we are also leaving Kiro, I guess, right?
Yes, so Christian. So yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye bye.